Masculinity is only all right if women display it. And then if you display anything else, that's pretty much it. Be a woman and act masculine. Don't be a man. Don't be a woman who wants to be feminine. Just don't be anything else.
Hello everyone. I will try and keep this introduction short. But you know me, why use one word when I could use 20? First order of business. Who let me have a spinny chair? That's not a good idea. I can't be trusted with a spinny chair. I don't actually think I'm grown up enough for a spinny chair, because I spent the whole time spinning and I didn't realise until I watched the footage back. So if that annoys some of you, I am very sorry. So this is a very different video to normal, as you might have gathered. It's very chatty, obviously conversational, and unscripted. And I don't normally do unscripted because I'm not very good at it. And I actually think that my natural speech pattern is quite jerky. But right, irrelevant, Galatea. Anyway, Steph from Uberboyo very kindly came onto the channel to have a chat. He also helpfully took care of recording it all because, as those of you who have been with me for a while will be well aware, I am technologically disabled. So everyone remember your manners and say thank you, Steph, in the comments. Some of you may recall that I mentioned his channel in one of my last videos, where I credited his videos with helping me figure some stuff out creatively with YouTube, and I will link his channel down below, and I urge you all to go and check it out, especially if you're interested in Jung, in storytelling, in how to be productive, in creativity, anything like that, all kinds of things. It's a very good channel, go check it out. And in this video, we talked about the hero's journey, storytelling, how the female hero's journey fits into all of that, and we also got into discussing the nature of femininity. And I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and it got me thinking about a lot of things, actually. And towards the end of the video, he asked me a question that I couldn't answer at the time, but I thought about it a lot. And I actually woke up the other night in the middle of the night and then couldn't sleep because I had all these thoughts and I had to kind of madly scribble down a few pages of an answer. And it is probably insane, mad ramblings, but I do have an answer now. So yeah, I don't know, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If any of you are in fact interested in my slightly insane middle of the night thoughts answer to that question, then potentially he might be kind enough to come back on and at some point and have a chat about it. I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, I will stop now because I've talked long enough. And I know this is a very long video, but you know, whether you're in agreement with the things discussed or not, I hope it gives you some thoughts to chew on regardless. Yeah, so enjoy the video.
I saw you were like reviewing some basically like popular books that were going around and whatnot, and some of those can be brilliant, but you also have this like style where you're sort of like, this is shit, I don't like this. People say it's good, it's not good.
Yeah, well, because I started off doing it, I think because like this was a few years ago, I started sort of, because I'm really interested in books and it's kind of the whole booktube thing. I was watching a lot of these booktubers talking about these books, recommending loads of books, and I was like, oh, they sound interesting, I'll read them, because I love fantasy is the main thing. And they were all just completely shit, and no one was saying that they were shit, and I was just really confused. Everyone's saying how amazing these books are and they're just terrible. So I don't know, I think that's kind of, it just annoyed me, and I kind of wanted to rant about it. So that's kind of how it started. And yeah, I don't know, talk about movies as well recently and James Corden and all that. But
and what would give you the standard, the criteria for judgment? What would make you say, for example, all right, these books are shit? Have you like, are you read in classical literature, or was it just your gut instinct, your intuition? You're like, something in me says this is shit, and I trust this more than popular opinion or something like that. How would that criteria come about?
Well, it's mainly things like, okay, so like on a logical level, how well it's written, how, if the plot makes sense, if the plot works, the characters, is the characterization good, the meaning, all that. But a lot of that I can forgive if like, I don't know, if like the feeling of the book's good, you know, I don't know.
It's got a vibe.
Like there are some books that I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
don't
the gut
work
says
well. So. Yeah, but like, you can forgive it because of various other things. But yeah, a lot of it's just, I mean, it's so I mean, it's mainly like young adult literature that I was talk about because it's so shit. It's just like mass produced, like the same recycled plot and characters over and over again. And it annoys me quite a bit because it gets, yeah, yeah, it's hard to find any good fantasy books because of that. But
I guess that's sort of like something that we wanted to bring up at some point. We can kind of dive into is something that me and you were talking about, and you of course were bringing up this problem that you're seeing in much popular literature. You're sort of saying to yourself, this is crap, it's formulaic, you know. And I obviously come from a channel where I'm talking about Carl Jung and I'm talking about all this type of stuff and blah 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 blah. Now he's very famous for being sort of one of the seedlings, one of the nuggets for the whole hero's journey thing. And actually something that I've seen people complain about before, which I think is a good complaint, is that out of this hero's journey came a Hollywood standardized idea, because Joseph Campbell wrote this very, very, very good book, this cross mythology analysis book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. George Lucas read it. And then he said, God damn it, I'm going to make a story out of this. And he I don't know, was it that direct, but he basically constructed Star Wars with many of this mythos in mind. And he took things like, you know, may the force be with you, was him understanding like the concept of a religious thing and all this type. And Darth Vader is the archetype of, you know, death. Like it's all very, very well put together. And that of course was a massive hit. And then Hollywood started to produce this conception that like all stories follow the hero's journey. And then what you see nowadays when you go to like writing classes and whatnot is that it's just like, here's a structure of a story. You get a hero and you make them go into a bad place, and it's like literally procedural at this point. And that's almost turning into a stiffness, because it's almost like in a surreal way. Stories are now married to like a human dopamine cycle or something like this, and it's just a very, very strange thing. So if you have any thoughts on that, or
it's like, I think the one of the main things with that is that it just makes the character suffer. I mean, that's, I think, probably the main thing that I love when reading a good book is how good the characters are. But when it's so formulaic like that, it feels almost like, I don't know, like the characters are kind of possessed by the plot, or they're just like empty tools for the, you know, oh, it's this time, I better go fight the dragon at this point, rather than like an actual person who's making all these decisions. I don't know, I'd say that probably would be my biggest complaint with it.
Yeah, no, it's good. You know, it reminds me, it's ironically matches to something I was doing today, because I'm working on course material for the stuff that I do. And one thing I'm talking about, you know, active voice and passive voice. So you've got this problem where if you construct a sentence, subject, verb, object, that's a typical way to construct a sentence. And the subject would be like, Steph eats food, and subject, verb, eats food is the object. And people will have a habit of writing passively, which is like, the food was eaten by Steph, which is like very weak writing and very unengaging writing. And I was just thinking about it very, very deeply. And I realized that this is sort of the whole idea of the hero is based in, there's a subject, there's a character, and he has a goal, or she has a goal, and it's like a will, and there's an intention, and there's a drive underneath it. And they're the active force who pushes out into the world and goes and tries to do something, you know? And I think about the stories that have really caught me, and it's almost like maybe a bit of a crude example, but a good movie recently, I guess it was based on real life, was, you know, Wolf of Wall Street. Like that is such an engaging movie, because the character,
I've not actually seen it, but no.
Well, when you see it, you'll get what I mean, because the character is nuts. Like the character is just so intense at the center of it, and regardless of what you say of the plot, it actually has many of those arcs, but you can see that it's the character driving it forward, you know? And that's really what I find so fascinating about it.
I'm not actually, I don't know, I might be of the opinion that the plot doesn't matter as much as the characters. Like I really can, I don't know, but that might just be a personal preference, but I can really forgive like even quite a lackluster plot as long as the characters are interesting people, or I don't know, making of the, because otherwise what's the point in it? Because it's not, I don't know, it's not really a story then, because well it is, but it's like you wanted to read, the reason you're reading a story or listening to a story or watching a story, it's about the person, it's about people. So I don't know, it seems a bit pointless at all. But yeah, I'd agree with that. It has definitely made it very formulaic. Although, do you think that would have happened anyway with, like, I guess Hollywood and also the publishing industry as well? Just the general stagnation in storytelling, just like trying to make money, basically. Like, oh, okay, this kind of thing works. Is it just because of the hero's journey it's kind of ruined it, or is it right? We know this kind of formula, this thing works. We don't want to take any creative risks because then we might lose a load of money. So let's just do what we've always done. Or,
to be honest, no, I think you're very much on the point there, because we got to be careful. We don't just aimlessly complain. And I think it's quite an accusation to turn around and accuse the hero's journey, that pattern of ruin in storytelling. I've often looked at this and try to think, you know, you can maybe philosophically about it, is that these are second order effects of a far bigger phenomenon. And this phenomenon could be taken as far back as like, you could say mass industrial revolution problems, you know, because back in the day, what were stories back in the day? Like, I guess the stories were essentially myths. They were religions. They were that close to things. And the way a story would happen is you'd get a great character like Hercules or Jesus or Achilles. And these would be, as you would say, like extremely assertive people. And there was no guy sitting around being like, let's construct the hero's journey out of this. These are probably real, well, as I believe, these are real dudes who went out and did things, did crazy things like fought Troy or whatever. And then people claimed out of their stories, people like Homer, poets, came along and told their stories and dressed up their actions, dressed up their behaviors with, like, obviously there's a plot and there's a kind of hook into it or not, and that is a part of it, you know. It's the sort of surprise that Achilles dies, sorry for the spoiler, and all this type of stuff. But it's not like artificial where they're putting the plot together first or something like this. And then that continues on basically throughout all of history. But then what you see is, you know, 18th, 19th century, we start to scale. There's just so many more people. And the way that, and heroes become less relevant. I actually think a beautiful, ironically strange and surreal thing to look at is World War I, for example, when suddenly, you know, Achilles was the soldier going out and fighting the war. But all of a sudden now, there's no such thing as a hero in World War I, because even the best soldier can just get fucking gunned down by like a machine gun, and he's just a dead body. He's a loser like everyone else. There's no way that you can be more skilled than an artillery shell. These type of things, and then all of a sudden, like, everything becomes more passive. Everything scales. The way you win a war is just by mass producing like human robots that run at guns, and this starts to show us a sort of trend that gets to increase and increase and increase. And you start to see sort of similar things happening with even stories, is that they become less about central characters, heroes pushing stuff forward, I guess, in some way, and it starts to become more about, like, as you would say, like formulaic entertainment. Like, it moves away from a deeply kind of like religious thing about you can transcend yourself and all this, and it turns into like churn out the entertainment, keep people sort of just like on the carousel, Hollywood, this type of stuff. Now, like, it's very reductionist, but it's one way you could look at this. One way you could skin the cat.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think, do you think as well it's that a lot of these kind of writers or movie makers or whatever are kind of taking like this very superficial understanding of the hero's journey, just the really like basic steps, without kind of, I don't know, without kind of implementing any like the deeper meanings behind it, or like, I don't know, like this, the style of it over the substance of it, like the.
What would you mean by deeper meaning?
Well, like almost that the steps of the hero's journey are just kind of a representation of, I don't know, something deeper that's happening. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that way, but they're just taking the like obvious, I don't know, does that make sense? The like really basic kind of steps. I don't know how to phrase that. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but.
So I kind of think I get what you're saying, because they will come up with a little wheel. That's the very famous one, isn't it? So they start off and they're like, all right, well, you got the hero and he's in the village, you know, and then the someone calls and says, you have to go do something special, and he's like, no, I don't want that. No, thank you. I'm going to sit here, keep on eating out of this big cauldron, and then I'm going to go and dive in. You're going to say something, were you?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's because in order for a character to have a true hero's journey, you have to know who they are as a person, surely. Like, they have to be a fully formed character. Maybe that's it. So when they're just taking the steps of the hero's journey, with like a non-character that's just there, it kind of defeats the purpose. With a character that's not really a character, that's just there to carry out the hero's journey, but it's not a true hero's journey because they have to be a real person or a real character in order to. Does that make more sense? I don't know if I phrased that 100%.
Better. I get you 100%. So we have the formulaic wheel, which you do need a plot, you do need a wheel.
Sure.
And then what happens is, well, a lot of these people like make the wheel the whole point of everything, and then they get like literally a formulaic character and just take them through the wheel, and like there's a story, guys. I'm story told, and you're like, I don't know about that now at all. And instead of I guess it's about like the skill of psychology, being able to sit down and think about like what drives people to do strange things, and then they sit down and think about from first principle, like, what's a character, like what would move someone to do anything at all. And perceive inside someone's heart. And oftentimes there's just not very much depth put into that stuff at all, because maybe some of these people aren't that deep. Again, big accusation, but but that type of thing, that you've got those type of problems. Yeah, I'd absolutely see stuff like that an awful lot. And it would be certainly influenced by, we want cash, and so just follow the damn formula and we'll get cash. I don't want any of your creativity. Go feck off, go do your own thing, this type of stuff. So how does all this relate then to the woman question? Like, how does it all relate to the female storytelling and female hero's journey and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, so when you think of the heroine's journey, when you talk about the heroine's journey, because I've seen several different kind of explanations of it, or like variations, although they all kind of link into each other a fair bit. Are you talking about Beauty and the Beast? Is that like
not necessarily not
okay.
necessarily because I guess like the thing with an abstraction like a hero's journey is that is could you use any one story to represent it? I don't know. So Beauty and the Beast is like this is a very Jordan Peterson take, isn't it? He says that's quite archetypal, because you have a woman in a state where she meets a monster, and her the drama is her ability to shackle him and bring out the prince within him. Like, it's another one is kissing the frog and he turns into the prince, which is a bit of a less maybe aesthetically pleasing one, but still it's the same sort of direction. I don't know how much credit you give that, what you feel about that. Do you like that one? Do you see that show up in the stories a lot, or is that a representation of it? How would you abstract it?
So I think I do actually like that story, and I think it does make sense, but I think, I don't know, again, this can be a big accusation. I think it's just told wrong so often, or like not wrong, but well, yeah, I don't know, or like, and then not, and I can think of examples that could kind of fit into that, but that are more like vague, that I appreciate more, rather than, I mean, well, there's obviously, I think there obviously is a level of truth that anyway, because things like Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey and all that wouldn't be so successful. But I don't know, I think, and you see it like in young adult literature as well, it's everywhere, it's all over the place. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like it's like a twisted version of it, or like a twist on like the kind of Beauty and the Beast thing, because I would probably think of it more in terms of sometimes an actual man, or like a masculine force would probably be. So have you ever seen the movie, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, Chocolat? If you've ever seen that film?
I have not.
Okay. It's one of my favorite films, and I think that's probably one of my favorite like female driven stories. So it's about this woman, she goes to this kind of French town, and it's really restricted and oppressive, kind of all represented in the figure of the mayor. And she basically kind of comes in and upsets everything, and basically kind of just changes this whole community.
It's like chocolate, chocolat.
Yeah.
Chocolat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she kind of, well, she comes up against, it's not in such an obvious way, it's not like a specific guy, although there are several different men throughout the kind of film. I think it was a book originally, but throughout the film that kind of she comes up against. But it's, yeah, I don't know, it's just I think that's kind of quite, to me anyway, that seems like quite a good representation of like the heroine's journey, that she just doesn't give up and managed to change people and change this whole society and kind of change how things are done, and help a lot of people. But yeah, I think that, does that make sense? Am I making any, I'm sort of rambling, I can hear myself rambling. But
I have some takes. I'm checking this out, by the way. I'm on the IMDb thing. I'm checking out Chocolat. Damn French, like they just literally make their language by dropping out letters at the end. That's like that's not how you make a language. Like, what are you going on? Anything else you want to say before I go rambling?
You ramble, and if I've got anything else to say, I will say it. So
excellent. So you're going to resonate with this. You think this sort of speaks to you as the feeling of maybe the kind of the struggle of being a woman, or part of the experience of being a woman. I'm assuming something along these lines.
Yes, but I would say also, because I talk about this a lot in my videos as well, it makes me something that kind of annoys me a lot, but that it's also a really good representation of, she's a really strong character without having to sacrifice any of her femininity in order to be a really strong character. And
nice.
she doesn't, because that's the main thing, but which is more relatable.
Let's see.
Then I don't know, like Captain Marvel or something, because it's just not, I feel most women, that's not really a realistic way to be strong. Not that's a generalization, but
all right, I've a couple of tabs open. If I have any naughty tabs open there, people, please just forgive me. It shouldn't be anything too dodgy. Red Book, Avatar, we're all good. Writing versus images. Return to hope no one sees that one. Anyway, this is Chocolat. So this is, again, as I was complaining about the French, there's like, why can't you just add the fucking E? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, is it really that hard to just add an E? You've said a couple of things, and I checked it out to try to think about what it is. I like what you're sort of saying there, because all right, obviously, like, I don't know how much you want to go into this, because this may be a little bit spicy, edit it out at your own will if you wish.
okay.
But the whole sort of narrative, you could say, maybe we could even take Sex in the City as a very, very interesting one that promotes that sort of city girl, strong woman thing. And for example, there's a very famous article that came out recently, like I saw it doing the rounds on Twitter. I love how fame in my head is tied to Twitter. The girl who wrote Sex in the City she's like 50 and she's alone, and she writes that she actually regrets being alone and stuff like this, not having kids. That's what it was. And of course, she was putting out these scripts suggesting that, like, there's some glamour in this life, and of course there is. It's fun to be in the city and all this type of stuff, and men fall for this stuff too. It's not just women. But it leads to, like, there's you could say the myths lead to a lifestyle that is fun, quirky, plays into, it's actually very consumerist when you think about it, and plays into that sort of consumerist attitude. But there's a sort of shallowness to it, and there's also this fox building up of strength. Another one that I find quite this is, again, like, getting a bit of trouble, but is the it's almost like a pressure. Like a girl is told that if she's not, like, she has to do everything herself, and this is that's going to break her. I've spent an awful lot of time doing, like, I've spent time doing the therapy thing. I've met girls who've been broken by, it's a lot to take on the whole world. Most men can't take on the whole world. In fact, the way relationships worked in the past is that it was so hard to take on the whole world. You and a girl would get together and you'd, like, take on the world together. That was the point. That was Bonnie and Clyde mode. That's kind of the ideal when you think about it. And nowadays we have that individualistic idea that you've got to take on the world by yourself, and guys are out there trying to do the same thing, and it's turning into, like, either you're an alpha male who smashes 6 million women and all this type of stuff, or else you're an incel loser or something like this, and all this stuff. And what I find so interesting then about even looking at this on a surface level, and again, tell me if you think I'm off, is that maybe the more feminine instinct is to, I think feminine instinct and masculine instincts are the same, but expressed in different ways. Women, for example, want a legacy. My grandmother, every time I go home to her, she stops me. She's like, "Steph, come over here." And I'm like, "All right, what now?" And she picks up this, like, picture, and she's like, this is you. And I'm like, "Thanks, there you go, Grams." And she's like, this is the your dad. This is the before this, and she holds up this big thing, and she's like, "There's 12 generations in this, and I've got pictures, and I'm connected to them all." And she takes great meaning in having this massive legacy, this big family. She really loves that, and it's, like, so authentic as well. It's literally, I can feel the vibes off her. Like, there's a spiritual power to it. She's coming to the end of her life, and she's like, "This is what mattered. This is success. This gives me justice and dignity in the world. This is how God has rewarded me for my struggles, for all the pains and struggles I went through in my life and whatnot." And you're seeing there something deep come alive in that. I see that, and I'm like, that's real. And every girl, just like every man, is going to face that at some point, that instinct of, what was my legacy? What was the point? And that we're going to switch on. And some girls might think you can build a business and leave that, and maybe you could for some girls, but a lot of them might be more tilted towards grams. And men will have a sort of similar thing. In fact, legacy is literally something men talk about quite explicitly. They might like it more like, all right, I'd like my name stamped on a business, or maybe I'd like my name stamped on some kids or something like this, these type of things. But it's sort of the same instinct that's operant. And something I find quite interesting about this is, looking at this even initially, I see you suggesting, all right, I vibe with this, because it's not about a woman going in and taking over the town. It's not about women going in and, like, doing, I don't know the story, maybe it is, but it's about a woman going
in a different way, maybe, but yeah.
And this is actually quite interesting, because if this is maybe a story about a guy, he'd go in and he'd become like the chieftain or something like this.
Yeah.
But it seems like the girl is going in and she's claiming space, just like men would want. He wants to claim space. She's going in, she's claiming her space. She's beautifying it. And you could say she's almost like aesthetically, it's almost like an artistic perspective or something like this. Now, this is wild guesses from never having seen it. But it's that same sort of instinct to beautify, to redeem, to transform.
Well, yeah. I'd say that it's to heal, really, is the kind of key message of the film. So basically, it's kind of, I mean, it's one of my favorite. It's my favorite type of story where it's like implied magic. You don't really know if there's actual magic or if there's not. It's very subtle. So she travels around with her daughter, and wherever they go, they sort of set up a chocolate shop. She's a chocolatier, and she goes to this little French town that's really restricted. It's during Lent, and everyone's got these rules they've all got to follow. And she decides to open a chocolate shop during Lent, and everyone's like appalled and outraged. And also she's single, she with her daughter there, so they're scandalized. But basically it's kind of implied as well. You don't really know if there's like something magical about the chocolate, because then people start eating it and it's like things in their life start to improve or change, and she's kind of healing people. And there's as well in the story, she kind of takes under her wing, there's this other woman who's sort of being abused by her husband, and she kind of takes this woman in, and that character is the best representation of how the town changes, because at the beginning she's really like scared and really restricted and afraid, and at the end she just kind of has bloomed. So I'd say, yeah, I don't know, it's like, and she heals all these relationships between people, causes kind of loads of trouble at first, but yeah, and then it all kind of, she kind of just changes the whole town. So that would be, yeah, I'd say she kind of heals it really, and influences it a great deal. So
no, that actually sounds really cool. I think there's I think there's something in there, because I guess like what I'm trying to do is model out, you could say, the feminine instinct and maybe the problems often that people are given about how to, because what I think is so problematic now is that women are given a model of how they should be, which is like, it's almost like a little man as opposed to a woman. And it's not about saying like, because if you tell a girl, don't be interesting and just shut up and stay in the corner, like this is starting to lean on the sort of deadening her personality. But then telling her to be a little man and compete with all the dudes out in the kind of like, that's not going to work either. But something like this is suggesting it just sounds feminine in that way. It's like, for example, maybe the old story would be like a guy goes out and he busts his ass to claim a house. But have you ever met a bachelor before? Like even me, like you just sleep on a couch in the middle of the floor. It's an absolute mess. There's like literally like one pan, one pot. The house is a wreck, and it's just because the guys aren't just wired to think that way. It was the girl will come in and he'll create the space, and then she'll beautify the space. She'll make it magical. Yeah. She'll bring her vibe to it.
Boys' student houses are the worst. They're horrible, horrible places.
I hate to break it to you, but like it goes long past student as well. But this is the thing: is that's the type of vibe. And then the girl comes in and she's like beautifying it's almost like he provides the skeleton, she provides the flesh. And it's the marriage of the two forces that creates beauty. And this is actually, Jung would say this about art. You need the masculine assertiveness to want to push and tell the truth, but you also need the balance and the feminine skill of wanting to represent the truth in its fullest extent. Like there's always a sort of a mirage and balance of these type of the masculine and feminine forces are operant. And so is this a sort of representation of the girl coming in and using the feminine magic of beautifying things, bringing good, animating life, bringing that stuff in. I as I said, I haven't seen it. I don't want to read too much into it, but it would, even on the surface, seem to me as a better way of approaching these type of things. Talking to girls about powers they actually have and things that they actually can do, as opposed to chasing something they don't have.
Yeah, I think so. And and also the way she deals with kind of conflict as well. I mean, she doesn't back down. Like she's a lot of people try to bully her several times kind of throughout the film, and she's doesn't allow it to happen, but also not in like, I feel like if it was a modern movie, she'd like punch them in the face and say something witty, or I don't know, which obviously she doesn't do in that version. She just refuses to kind of back down. And you just, I mean, that is something I've ranted about quite a lot on my channel, is like, and that annoys me, is I don't like it, the now trying to equate femininity with weakness, and if you're too feminine, then there's something wrong with you and you're too weak, and really you've just, which is fine. Like I don't want to say that all women need to be like that, like that of course there's loads of different types of women, and some women are more naturally masculine, and that's awesome, that's great for them, but like there's like a sneering, that's how I've said it before, it's like a sneering at like femininity, I feel, in a lot of kind of media now, and I really don't like it.
It's true. There's a dishonesty to it. There's a lack of imagination. There's actually just almost a lack of femininity in some sense, and there's a lack of seriousness. There's loads of things, because what you're describing, I think, is I think that's massively important, because you're trying to give a positive model for the feminine. instead of giving a fake model or a low resolution model of the masculine to give to
Yeah.
women, to and it in an implied inferiority to femininity. Because, for example, you're talking about concepts. Men deal with conflict, and this is sort of this idea, you know, like legacy is shared. Conflict is an experience we all deal with.
Mm.
Maybe the male aspect of conflict is maybe more to the point and more direct and more with the fist, but women might have women need a model for how they deal with it, because women simply aren't, like, in most situations of conflict, going to be able to throw punches. It's dangerous, in fact, if they go that onto them. If they do that with the wrong guy, that could turn out really bad. And there's no nobility in bullshitting them. Again, this will get me in trouble, but you know, the whole female martial arts thing. It's important that women know how to defend themselves. I agree with that 100%. But there's also a part of it we have to sit her down and be like there's science on this stuff. Like an average guy is just simply way stronger than you. This is well known in martial arts. For example, you have weight classes, and if I weigh 90 kg and I come up against a guy who's 100 kg, that's such a huge advantage to him. It's very hard to fight someone who's heavier than you. And this is something that you kind of see a little bit, like with all the kind of heroes, the movies and all this. Girls just tend to be way lighter than men. I'm 95 kilograms. Like, most girls rock in at about 60. I'm a huge compared to them. And most guys would be an awful lot bigger. And there's something sort of dangerous about maybe saying, all right, you can just punch him in the balls and run away. It's like, oh God,
Yeah.
I really don't know about that.
Yeah.
You know, like, you'd have to kick him really hard and get it right the first time. And there's scary stuff that comes out of this. You know what I mean? And then, of course, there's a question, like, is there better models? Like, is it better to sit girls down and say, like, all right, look, be able to stab someone if you need it, but please, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, there's like other parts of yourself that you should develop out and understand and be careful for, you know, and conflict resolution skills and all this type of stuff, and how this stuff would work.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, it's just not empowering. A lot of these kind of female heroes that are like that. I mean, people can write as many like feminist articles as they want about it, saying how it's amazing, fantastic, it's so inspiring. It's like, sure, you can say that, but for most women, it's I don't know any woman who, if they're feeling threatened, is going to resort to violence. Like, that would be the absolute last resort, and probably only if they instigate it. Like, I can't really, like, I can't really think of what circumstances you do that. You'd want to avoid that at all costs, because yeah, and it's just a bit ridiculous and very unconvincing when you see kind of all these, I don't know, all these characters going crazy and being amazing and like punch people. And that's, I don't want to go off topic here, but I recently watched the new Mulan film, like the live action Mulan. Have you seen it?
I have not. I'm gonna like.
Oh my God. I'm gonna do a video on this because it annoyed me so much. So the original Mulan was like genuinely inspiring, because you see her in like the Disney version, you know, from whenever it was, like the 80s or whatever. And you see how, like, she obviously pretends to be a guy. She's like in the army with all these soldiers training. And in the original film, you see her struggle. So she's like getting beaten up. She can't keep up with them. She's like, and she even gets sent away basically, because like, look, you're not good enough, you need to leave. And then she manages to kind of figure out a way to be smart and stay, and manage to kind of prove herself that way. But in this fucking film, so, oh my God, they just decide that she's just got magical powers from the beginning. She's somehow like, I'm gonna make like the best fighter ever, and no one can defeat her. None of the guys in the army, these huge brokes in the army, no, she's just magic or something now. I'm gonna not try and not get annoyed. But it's like, and then everyone's, you know, people writing articles saying it's, oh, isn't it fantastic and so inspiring? It's not. The original Mulan was inspiring and empowering because she earned it, and it was really, she was genuinely a hero. Like, what's heroic about that? She was just born with a magical power where she can just fight people really well or something. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I will stop ranting about that. But yeah, that was an example of it that just, oh my God, it disempowered her. It made her less heroic than the original, and I'm going to stop now. I'm sorry, but
Yeah, this is actually sometimes something people complain about with James Bond is that you know the way he
Okay.
just like always kills the baddie, and then that was a sort of trope about him. And then Daniel Craig comes along, and Daniel Craig is like getting fucking beat up the whole time, and people are like, "This is a real way better but James Bond because he's way more gritty and authentic compared to like Pierce Brosnan, which is depressing to
Yeah.
say because Pierce Brosnan was the Irish James Bond, but there you go. And Daniel Craig comes along, and he has that sort of like he's like got the superpowers. He's a great combat artist, but instead underneath them all, I think he probably represents one of the best James Bonds because he's very much a character. He fails a lot. He gets hurt a lot. All these things go wrong. He doesn't have magic powers. He's unable to just be like, shaken, not stirred. Like none of that stuff happens. And then, like I guess even translating that over to the women, and then of course drifting away from even the sort of natural conflicts that would be within the woman's psyche is a huge mistake. And I found something quite interesting that you said is that because I guess I'm approaching this from like obviously as a dude, like I'm going to come at this as a dude, and I'll be complaining and being like, stuff like combat and all these type of things aren't even suitable to women and stuff like this because it's a bit dangerous. There's a reality that you have to take into account. But you're saying more than anything, it's like it's not even about that. It's about the fact that women just like the women just won't be conflict orientated and go towards violence. They might deal with it a different way, and it's not even that. Like it's like people are telling people lies. Like it's like in reality, if you just observe the world around you, if you talk to the girls around you and look at how they deal with things, you'll actually see this type of stuff. And that's really fascinating because it's like one of those things that's showing you a sort of pregnant opportunity maybe to tell new stories that will hit home, which is like observe those things that are not being spoken about, those truths that are hidden, and try conceptualize them and bring them out. And this was, I said, it'd be very, very powerful because a lot of people feel this vibe. I know for certain.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know any woman who would kind of deal with conflict in that way. Yeah.
Well,
I'm still annoyed about Mulan.
Do you want me to? I'll take it off the screen. Is there any other films you'd like me to check out? Anything else? Yeah, we could psychoanalyze. Like what other ones have you watched recently that you've?
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. It was just the Mulan annoyed me because because in the original one she's heroic. Like she goes off to war to protect her father, and she's really can't hold her own with anyone else, and that's genuinely heroic. Like it's not so heroic when she knows she's just got magical powers and she just Have you seen the original Mulan or not?
I hate to break it to you, but I have not. No.
It's great film.
It's Chinese, is it?
It's one of the Disney. It's one of the old Disney.
See, the old Disney were nailing it. They got a lot of great films. Like they've got a lot of great films. And what do you think about the Beauty and the Beast then? Like how does that? I guess that's like. Do you see that as representative of that? In Chocolat, the magic power of sort of creating a space of beauty, and then this rejuvenates and heals and transforms the town. Maybe that's a deep feminine story, like the magic of femininity, of beauty, of aesthetics and all that.
Yeah, well, I see Beauty and the Beast in that story purely because the town itself is very it's very kind of overly masculine in the sense, and it's represented by the kind of patriarch of the town who's the mayor, and it's him that she mainly goes head to head with, but he's like kind of got this control over the town where it's very restricted and very so I'd kind of see it as like a symbolic kind of Beauty and the Beast story really in that sense.
Well, here's a question. I was going to say here's an interesting question, but that's a bit, I don't know, presumptuous. So you brought up the word empowerment. I hear this an awful lot, female empowerment, and I want the girls to be empowered. God bless you, girls, give you power. But of course, there's this big question: like, what type of power should you give them? What type of power do they have that you should make them aware of, as opposed to the foolish idea of telling them, oh yeah, you have these powers which you don't have, which will then make them feel inferior. In fact, in my life, I had this sort of problem where I naturally had this power to. I was very animate creatively. I'm a very visual thinker, and I'm just very, very good at crafting, you could say, narratives, and I'm just sort of naturally creative. And at one period in my life, I decided, all right, I'm going to completely focus on becoming a musician. And I'm going to judge myself entirely on music. And what was so weird is that even though I was very, very creative, I was like really sort of a lot of self-hate. I really was like, you're not good enough. I hate yourself. Fuck's sake, get better. Because I was trying to become like a musician. Since the beginning of my life, since I was a kid, I was like drawing pictures and all this type of stuff. But this little 2-3 year period, I went through an awful lot of existential anguish just because of a different alignment towards what I needed to be good at, what a power I needed to have. And then at the end of that, I sort of said, fuck this, what am I doing? And I said, what am I good at? What is my true power? Like, what am I actually animate at? And then I got back to that thing and brought that to music. And then I started to make music that people listen to. Before, believe me, you don't want to hear the stuff that came out in those 2 years. That's just definitely something you don't want to go to. And it's sort of, this is the what I'm trying to represent here, that you show girls the wrong power that they actually naturally have, and it causes pain, it causes strife, it causes anguish, it causes feelings of inferiority and stuff like this. But then, of course, we can be reactionaries and throw tantrums and complain about this stuff all we want. It's easy to complain, but what do we begin to assert as positive power? What do we say is your power? I like the way you can conceptualize it as magic, because you could maybe look at it as like that beautifying force, that capacity to, the very typical myth of you come into a house that's literally like, a nice house that's been seized with a guy pursuing maybe career accolades or something like this, but it's goddamn empty. He's sleeping in the middle of the living room on a feckin' mattress, and it's like, all right, that power to beautify, or even that power to go out into a community and create something and beautify that, or even the power to go into a family and bring good energy to a family and make people beautiful, or take people and show them how to dress and stuff like this, or all these profound feminine skills that really add an awful lot of taste and culture to the world. I'm ranting, but Nietzsche himself, a very masculine philosopher to some, speaks about this distinctly, saying that the ideal is the cultures can have a feminine or a masculine force. He saw the Germans and the Romans and the Arabs and the Jews, he saw them as like masculine forces because they go and they assert themselves upon reality. But there's feminine cultures as well, like the Greeks or like the French, and they develop out of themselves like very high culture. And he preferred the feminine cultures because feminine cultures, when they succeed, are the ones that produce high art, exceptional achievements of like things that last throughout the ages. The reason why we all look back to ancient Greece, even Rome, more masculine, but ended up looking back to ancient Greece because the Greeks were just so sophisticated. The French have that same sort of vibe as well. And this is a kind of statement to feminine power. Like these things are genuinely real, but it's almost like underrepresented, if you want to put it this way. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Well, I just think it's devalued and just seen as like pathetic now. I feel like that seems to be the overall kind of feeling. And I'd say that, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I'd say that most women don't really, they don't believe it as well. All these stories where they're like beating guys up and all the rest of it. They don't really believe it, but I think it does like create feelings of inferiority though as well, because then I don't think they ever believe it's true, but it's like, yeah, I definitely felt some of that, okay, so if I'm not this way, I know I'm not like that. I can't be like that. I'm not naturally like that. Then there's something wrong, and there's a weakness. And that's one of the things that annoys me a lot, is seeing femininity as weakness, and I just reject that completely. I don't see it as that at all. And in all the kind of women I admire in my life, who are a lot of them very feminine, they're not weak at all, and it's just, I don't know. The kind of general theme in the culture now seems to be that it is, and that, and I think it's a very strange neurotic irony. Like it is very, very strange how, for example, masculinity is hugely demoralized in the culture as well. Yet there's a sort of masculine Puritan bluntness to the culture as well. It's strange. So like anything overtly masculine and assertive, such as telling the absolute truth, is considered bad, but of course being restrictive, confined in your thinking, even you can say that sort of frigidness that is a sort of trait of masculinity as well, is very, very present. And then femininity, everything is encouraged. It's like, we need to get in touch with our female sides. We need to redeem more of the feminine. Women should make decisions about how we rule the world. It's not like men should be completely decategorized and rule off and all this stuff. But at the same time, actual femininity is completely demoralized as well. It's the strangest irony ever. It's like there's this grid and we're hitting the two wrong parts of the grid instead of hitting the two right parts of the grid or something like this. Well, I'd say about that, it seems to be now that masculinity is only okay if women are showing it. So women are allowed to be masculine. Yes, but that seems to be true. I don't know. Just seems to be the case.
That's a hot take, as they say in the business. That's a hot take. I think you're right though. Yeah, that's actually very, very true. It's like masculinity. There you go. There's a there's a what you say, a clip that we take out. Masculinity is only all right if women display it, and then if you display anything else, that's pretty much it. Be a woman and act masculine. Don't be a man. Don't be a woman who wants to be feminine. Just don't be anything else. That's the kind of vibe.
I mean, I'd say so. Obviously, there are like more feminine guys and more masculine girls, and that's completely fine. But yeah, I think in general, there's still some things that are generally true, and pretending that they're not is a bit weird.
It's actually, that's another interesting thing as well, is that the you could say the law of exceptions. Like exceptions, there's this phrase where you say exceptions make the rule. And so like the reason why we have generalities is because they're true. And then people will say, but there's exceptions. It's like, but there's in some sense, there's almost always going to be an exception of sorts, and that's okay. And those people do need a special place. In fact, my whole channel is about talking about, you know, the 10% of people in the world who be creative. They're not going to be like everybody else. They're going to be highly strange and surreal people, and they'll have a different strategy through life. But ultimately, like the most important thing for them to realize is they can't go around and hate the normies, because the normies in some sense are there for a reason. Like it's like a body being at war with a brain being at war with its own body. Like it's tied to it ultimately, and it has to, wisdom is about going beyond that and understanding that it's all kind of trying to work together. So yeah, I see that stuff there as well. I guess I have a lot of questions, but I don't know if you have any thoughts, anything you'd like to ask, or anything you'd like to say.
I don't know. Not on that specifically at the moment. What are your questions?
So something I always try to think about is, as I said, like women want legacy, but it manifests in a different way. Women want power, but it manifests in a different, like a man's conception of power might be the indomitable competence that James Bond has, where he can fight and he's very smart and can figure out, like, you know, if someone's trying to like put poison in his martini and stuff like this. Like that's the type of character that a man wants, his ability to operate his will upon the world. And we could even get into that in terms of sexuality as well, because I think that the women's idea of the ideal man is a model of what man looks up to in himself, you know. And I think there might be something close to that in women as well. It'd be interesting to look into that stuff. This would be like Jung's anima and animus. But like going across from that, power to women would be, I don't, we're trying to talk positively, like what would be a good model for feminine? Power to women would be what? This ability to, is it beautify? Is it heal? Is it transform? Then conflict, how does that work? Like what is the kind of clash and correlation between all these? Purpose, I don't know, do these all things come into it as well? Like how do you see a woman's version of all these forces?
How do I see a woman's version of these? So I think all that's true, what you're saying, and I think,
thank God.
I think though that within that there's not, because I think that's the thing. I think when a lot of women hear like people talk about femininity or traditional feminine or, you know, character or whatever, I think a lot of them immediately go to like weak or just keep your head down, and I get that, that kind of thing, which I don't know, I feel like
so the two negatives that you often see that you can consider like stereotypically negative would be like femininity is modeled as weak, meaning like literally like the kind of frightened neurotic chick in the corner that's like, that's the world, like Sleeping Beauty, I guess, or something like this. Or maybe that's, I don't know, she's just asleep. I'm not sure if that's necessarily weak. She's just chilling. Like, I don't know. Okay, maybe that's not a good one. And then the other one would be, are you saying, is it a pushover, or how would you articulate it? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, I don't think that's what it is to be feminine, but I think that a lot of women, when they hear that they think, oh, okay, so I just need to be like, the emphasis on that. I think, I don't know, I think there's sometimes not enough emphasis on strength within that, but it doesn't have to be the same. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Chocolat, that film then, because she's very, like, she's not a pushover. She doesn't give in. She stands by her values. She stands by what she believes in, but she's still very soft and feminine with that. And I think, I don't know how I'd phrase that in terms of like feminine power, but I think another really good example that I adored as a kid was Pocahontas. It was my favorite Disney princess, I think, and obviously couldn't articulate at the time, but looking back, I think because she's manages to be both, I think she's quite a good balance of masculine and feminine. She manages to be really feminine, but also she's like very kind of strong-willed and all of that stuff as well. So I don't know how
Yeah, okay, so I like this because I think about this in it's interesting because the fact that this stuff is vague. Look, I don't know like what you're planning to do, which your channel and all this type of stuff, or what you're planning to do going forward. But this is the type of stuff that I think is pregnant. Like it's like a sore spot. Like people are dying for these positive models because there is like, you can listen maybe to someone like me and I can go off on this and rant about how, you know, turning women into little men is not going to work. And this is reactionary behavior, like giving out about the sort of current trends. But this is actually, you could say, the masculine doing its job right. It's kind of and I mean effeminate in a weak way, in like a negative way. It's effeminate to turn around and sort of react constantly in a bitter way and complain and be like, nah, nah, nah. But it's assertive to stand around and say something like, all right, wait a second, what do we stand for? What do we want to stand upon? And so you could say something like, what is a good model for woman is not clear. I don't think people have it. And what would you offer as those type of things? And so, for example, this idea of strength, I think this is a brilliant one because I would start to look at it like evolutionary. You have lions, which are, I know, archetypically masculine perhaps, but in fact they're very funny creatures. For example, the women do all the hunting, but whatever. That's one way, just to go and attack and eat the animal. But there's all sorts of different strategies for making it through life. You go find a monkey and intelligence is what's ruling them. God fucking knows what an insect is doing, or an ant and stuff like this. Birds are like a very funny strategy and all this. And then you'll have like peacocks and they'll create those big mad tails. And like you could look at masculine and feminine, like very fundamental alternate strategies trying to overcome the problems of life. And there's strength in both. Both of those need all the virtues that they share. Like women need strength. It's a different version or model or view of what that is. They need, men suffer, women suffer. How do they deal with this type of stuff? And it'll be different in some sense. And giving like positive visions of that would be extremely powerful, I'd say. Extremely powerful.
I think that's what frustrates me a lot, is that so you get these two extremes. So either it's, so I think that's why I don't think that, I guess, like say, a lot of the reactionary kind of talk, you know, from people, I just don't think that's going to appeal to most women now, in terms of like, oh, you know, so I'll start from the beginning. So you either get two extremes. You either get the kind of Captain Marvel or whatever, the kind of an masculine idea of strength in a woman or a female character, or you get someone who's like, and not just in kind of movies and stuff, but in, like I say, kind of reactionaries, people talking about it, go, oh no, you shouldn't be like this, then here's the alternative, is be very feminine. But they kind of, within that, there's no emphasis on like having a bit of grit or strength. Like it's all just be very feminine and, you know, just kind of be very sweet and keep your head down and don't really cause much of a fuss, and kind of, which, I mean, that's fine, and they can, you know, talk about, but I just don't think, I mean, it's just not going to appeal to most women, I don't think. But and there's no, and so I think, at least I kind of find that slightly frustrating. It's like either you have to be like that, kind of very masculine, which isn't really going to work for most women, or you just are a bit of a pushover.
You should be like a Barbie doll.
Yeah, exactly.
I love cats and puppies. Like I wear pink all the time.
Exactly. And you never stand up for yourself, and I don't know. Those seem to be the two things, and there's not. I don't really think many, or well, maybe there are a lot of examples, but it's not really, at least now, kind of talked about really. I mean, I haven't seen anyone kind of talk about that you can be feminine and strong. I don't know. So that's the thing that seems to annoy me a lot, really.
Well, like as I said, like positive visions of this stuff would be very, very powerful, because it's like ultimately, I'm sort of saying the virtues of masculinity here. It is, I think we like, there's a feeling about this stuff out there, and there's a reactionary instinct to this, which is common, but not going to solve the problem. Whereas I actually do think male clarity is what is required here in some level. Like it needs to be sat down and be painted and shown and represented and presented to people so they can actually grab onto it and actually see exactly what this stuff is like, instead of this silly stuff where it's exactly as you're saying, like a neutered female body with no personality, or like, you know, whatever, I just stay in the corner and play with the cat, versus like, I don't know, some woman who's doing kung fu all the time. It's like, I don't know, most girls probably fall between these two extremes,
Yes,
not on these extremes. And then you start to think about this stuff, and it's like, how would I model that? In fact, this kind of brought up in my head Jung's idea of the animus and the anima. Let me see if I can get this stuff up there, because I don't really go into this too much on my channel, even though it is very fascinating. Animus, anima. I'm here on the internet right now, people. Sorry, there, Boomer, just typing in some words. So just give me 1 second. Jung had this interesting thing where he said, as the maturity of each of these characters moves up, the model in their heads of what is the ideal man or woman, the ideal sexual partner, changes. So for example, we'll use the girls and the men because it's the one that I understand the most. Like a girl will look at a guy, and her girl's animus, or a girl's vision, a model in her head is the ideal guy, the guy that gets her emotions going, you know, or gets her rowdy. We'll put it this way. This is sort of what he meant by animated. It begins as like Tarzan, is what Jung said. Typically, the archetype would be Tarzan, and so that's like, you know, the guy who's like physical beast, master of the earth, can fight. You go in and he's a specimen, and this would be the very and that's actually a signal of the girl's maturity level, according to Jung. Now, like, you can take from this theory what you want, but you know, you go into college and there's like the cheerleader girl, and she's, you know, cheerleader girl, you're kind of talking, you're like, I think you're probably on here on a scholarship, like, I'm not too sure why, I'm not too sure you got in here because your literature skills. And then she's in love with the guy, and you talk to the guy and you're like, I'm pretty sure you're here on a scholarship as well. Like that's the type of vibe going on. And then she's drawn to this physicality, and then as she matures, she will start to get drawn to a different type of model. So you might get I think he said a man of the word, which was like sort of Ernest Hemingway, or a public speaker of some sort, or like Tony Robbins maybe, or something like this. And this is obviously, she wants the guy to be physically compelling, because you sort of evolve, you stack on top of these. You don't just turn all the way and try to find an intellectual. You want a physical guy who can also speak. And then if you meet a guy who's like, you know, physical in his body, but can also speak, you'll notice that girls at that level will get absolutely fired up, and the Tarzan guy will start to drift out of their attention. He'll turn into like maybe a sort of playboy, but nothing too serious, nothing too interesting, maybe not even that turned on by it anymore, this type of thing, sort of a bit dull for them. And then it grows, and then the next sort of level of maturity for a woman would be the leader. So this is the physical guy who's a man who can speak, and now he's a man who's a leader of men. So this would be like the politician, the army leader, the guy doing a movement, the star, this type of thing, the guy who's controlling and asserting. And this is the chieftain, you know, the king. And this is now she's at that level where this is the highest status guy she could want, and she's really into this guy. And then above that, Jung talks about the spiritual guru, which I won't go into because I'm not even sure if I understand it yet, but it's sort of like the spiritualized level. This is usually the last level where you go beyond sex, and it's more like he's like a guide, if you will. This is obviously in old age, when you know, you're all shriveled up, and maybe the body appeal is not the thing anymore. You start to just work together and talk together, and it's about the intellect and all this stuff. And it's very interesting ideas that as woman matures, which she's animated by different models in her head of what man is. And women have the same thing. If you have any thoughts on that, by the way, before I keep on rocking and rolling, because I'll talk about the women's side of things and his take on it in a second.
Keep going. I'll say.
Okay, sweet.
I think of anything.
So he basically puts this model and suggests. Now, again, this is Jungian theory. You can take it for what it is, with a grain of salt if you wish. But he suggests that as the woman matures, her emotions, her desires will be animated for these different scales of guys, and they sort of build on top of each other. He starts out as a Tarzan, and you know, eventually the ideal is the leader, turning into this sort of spiritual guy. Now, that could just be coped by Jung because he was a spiritual guy. I don't know. And he also does the same model for men, suggesting that they have an anima, which is a female version of this. So they get animated by this. The first obvious one is Eve, is the naked chick who's physical beauty. And it's literally just blunt physical. And this is the Tarzan who comes in and sees the cheerleader, and it's like, you're hot, and it's like, you're hot. It's like, let's get down, 100%. And then as this scales, basically what we get is Helen of Troy next. And Helen of Troy is this character who has a bit more, she's politically active. So this is a character with a personality, you know. And Helen of Troy, of course, is still beautiful, one of the most beautiful women who's ever lived, according to the Greek writers. I'm sure they're not exaggerating, but she's also got, you know, she's got perks. She's strategic. In fact, I think a brilliant model for this is in Braveheart with the French princess who
I've never seen Braveheart.
Oh, it's pretty good.
I should watch it, but
and she's very feminine and very beautiful and acts very feminine, but she's stealthy. She's got personality. She's got will. She's got desires. And brilliant. It's really I like her character a lot, because she's not just a mute, that type of thing. Now maybe you'll text me and you'll be like, Steph, you fucking, she's shit, I hate this. Apologies if it's the case, but this is someone who's more alive. This is you could say a princess with a mind, intelligence, you know, a signal that there's something more to her. And then this graduates to Mother Mary. And Mother Mary is essentially, you know, the mother. This is to say, like, she's beyond a just sexual object, and now she's the woman who birthed your children. And this is now a far higher maturity, because this is something that's far more sophisticated than just, you know, a fun girl that you're going to fuck, or like literally a piece of meat you're going to fuck. It's now turned into literally like a almost like spiritual, you know, the Virgin Mary, and the sense of purity. That's the type of idea, the pure mother. She's now become, you've made a woman a mother, and she's now become pure. She's special. She's exceptional for this reason. And then the last one for them is Sophia, which is again the sort of like Oracle of Delphi, granny, completely desexualized, completely spiritual, completely, and she represents inside man intuition, for example, and the things like his gut feelings. And Jung would often say that like a man with a well-integrated anima will be more masculine than anybody else. And actually this is so true when you play it out, because you go and you talk to, for example, a boxer or a fighter, and in boxing you think it's a very manly thing, but in fact an awful lot of what they talk about is like, so when you feel the punch, you're going to react, and you have to get a feel, and there's it's very much about getting in the body and feeling and learning how to interpret someone's fear levels and stuff, and developing gut feelings for stuff, and even decision making. You know, decision making at a high level is what a king or a leader would do, and a huge part of that is like learning how to use your reason in alignment with your gut, and get your whole mind helping you to make these decisions and whatnot. These are all things that kind of go together as one. And so a man at the highest level is integrated with his intuition, and this is sort of what he means by Sophia. But nonetheless, you see that scale running up, and I think all of these are quite interesting, because they give us a sort of a broad view of all these different types that we're going to approach. It's not just like women are one way and men are another. It's like men will show up in like fucking 4 different ways at the very least. These are the archetypes. Women will show up the same, but there's a sort of scale to this stuff as well. Like there's a vibe where like an interesting character, there'll become a level where dudes, there's definitely a level where dudes just want like you know, they just want a porn chick. But then there's also a level where they do want to grow a personality, and that's a real thing out there. And girls are the same, this type of stuff. And I like that. I think there's something really powerful to that. I think Jung was obviously studied a lot of people to come up with this, and there's something to it.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it enough, but it sounds it sounds like there's definitely something there. That's interesting.
Yeah, you can check it out. I think it's in Man and His Symbols, so I don't know what you would make of that.
It makes sense. I mean, just sort of thinking about it on surface level, off the top of my head, I think
here it all is here. Actually, it's on. God bless you, Wikipedia. God bless you, Wikipedia. Here's the whole thing. Eve, object of desire, provider, nourishment, security, love. This man cannot function well without a woman. Oh wow, interesting. Oh, there's some intense stuff here. I don't know about this. Helen, worldly achiever, intelligent, talented. Mary, righteous and paradigm of virtue. Sophia, wise. Tarzan, Byron. Oh, he was the poet, man of action or romance. Professor, clergyman, orator. Lloyd George, the politician. I said, God damn it. And Hermes, the man of spiritual God. Yeah, that was it there. Oh, you can check that out. See what you make of that. You have some very, very interesting suggestions. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are. If you have any more ponderings on that, or if there's anything else you'd want to chat about.
I think, I don't know. I don't know how accurate this is, because this is just as I was kind of thinking about this, and a lot of the female heroine stories is that a big part of a lot of them seems to be endurance, like rather than, because I was thinking about this and thinking, is it them just being passive? And I think sometimes maybe, but or is it just, is there a level of endurance to that that's, well, not that it's not necessarily not present in the hero's journey, but in a different way, like or like if you think of Cinderella, that's kind of her main story, is that, sorry, my voice is going weird, is that she's just kind of got to put up with all this horrific stuff. But I think that seems to come up again and again in a lot of fairy tales and a lot of female kind of stories, whereas like in the hero's journey, he'll go and fight something. If there's something bad there, then he'll kind of, you know,
yeah, that's
take
a
it
good
on.
question.
But
Because I think
about that.
Well, I would say archetypically, like men being an active force, women, the feminine will be far more prone to passivity and far more prone to not being capable of asserting herself, like literally on a sort of most physical foundational level. If like she's getting pushed around, she can't fight back physically. Like there's this sort of part of it where actually Braveheart's great in this as well, because there's a scene where the English go up to Scotland and they enact prima nocta. I mean, I'm giving her a ribbon now, guys. Sorry, here the Scots are going. Here we go. We'll tell her what's up. And a prima nocta is basically where the lord, the English lord who was occupying at the time, it didn't really happen this way in practice, but this is sort of what went down. Would go down during a wedding and claim prima nocta, prime night, first night with the wife, and take the wife and have his way with her, of course. And there's this scene where he's like, the wife is getting taken, and the woman, the wife, sort of pauses it all because she knows that there's a big fight is about to kick off, and basically everybody, all of her friends are going to die, and there's going to be swords drawn and all this stuff. And so she basically just says, like, look, it's going to happen. We're beaten. And there's this sort of there's a surrender to the monster. There's a surrender to the beast in some sense. And I don't know, is that a virtue? I don't know, is that a story you want to tell and all this? But maybe this is not about the way that we want to tell things. It's like, just, this is an experience women often have to go through. They have to take the punch sometimes, and it might be more honest to just represent that properly.
Well, it comes up again and again. Like that's, I don't know, that's kind of what I kind of seen and noticed, like that, like just enduring seems to be kind of one of the main themes of it. Like even the original Little Mermaid, not in the Disney version, but like when she turns into a human, every step is like, I think it was like walking on blades or something, like, you know, and like just the whole story is just her suffering and willingly kind of doing that and putting up with it. So I don't know, it's
well, I'd say first of all that like this is 100% present for men as well. Like to live is to suffer, to survive is find meaning in the suffer. Like Buddha would be like, life is suffering. You're like, Jesus, bro, come on. But he's like, yeah, that's what it is. But I guess the thing you're asking about, like women wouldn't take the active approach. Like they're not going to attack the source of suffering, and their approach will be to like sort of bite their lip and just try and make it through and try stress through. And I don't know, as I said, like even though it might not be ideal, maybe it's real. Maybe it's just is what women, like the millions and billions of women who have lived throughout history, have constantly found themselves in having to endure, and it's become archetypal for that reason.
I don't know. Maybe it made more sense to think of it in terms of childbirth, I guess. If like that's not something you can fight, maybe that's kind of where that comes from. I don't know. Like it's not
true. Yeah,
it's not something you can get. It just seemed to be an interesting theme that kept coming up, was kind of that theme of endurance. And like, as I say, not that the hero's journey doesn't have that, but in a different way. Yeah,
it's a different way. Yeah. See, that's pretty cool. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there that like, yeah, it could be plunged very well, is to try find those sort of corollary themes, but get them right, as opposed to, because maybe that's the simple mistake, is people just look at the hero's journey and be like, well, women deserve to have a hero's journey, and so they just copy the men one. And it's just like, it's unintelligent. It's not sophisticated. It's actually lacking the feminine care to detail that you need. You need to sit down and say, what exactly is going on here, bit by bit. And instead, if you're just subtle and observant and calm and patient, you'll start to see, oh my God, the women's hero's journey has all these traits, but in just a very particular slant.
Yeah,
and that'd be powerful to articulate what that is.
Yeah. I think there are definitely stories that do that, but they're not as obvious. I don't know. There's not as an obvious a format. It's more vague. more. Yeah, I'd say actually another probably really good example of the heroine's journey, I'd say, is have you ever seen Spirited Away?
No, I watched the start of it and then I stopped it because something came up. Spirited Away.
I
I'm
love
awful
that
bad.
movie. But that one's actually quite interesting, because it's like, that's the other thing as well that I think a lot of women probably have a problem with, or at least that kind of used to annoy me, is like, yeah, the idea that I think there's that thing of that women then think, oh, does like the heroine's journey, or does that mean that women can't have an adventure? Does that mean that, because obviously the hero's journeys, they all get to go off and do stuff. And I think there is that element where it's like, well, why can't I go and see all these magical places and all the rest of it? And Spirited Away is good for that, actually. And now I think about it, what's really good at that, the heroine's journey, I think, is loads of children's literature. That seems to kind of, I think, present it quite well. But so in Spirited Away, she goes off to, she kind of leaves her parents and basically ends up in the spirit world. So she does encounter all these kind of strange creatures and things, but there's several times in that film where she encounters like monsters, actual monsters. I think there's like 3. And basically she just kind of, it's I think it's kind of it's quite feminine story in the sense that she doesn't fight them. That's not how she approaches it. She kind of befriends them. And they then not so monstrous or not monstrous at all. It happens several times throughout that. But I think that's the other thing that probably a lot of women would have an issue with is the kind of adventure aspect, because I think that's important as well, and that's something that they might feel is lacking. I don't know.
And even you could talk about because Jung would say stuff like women, the animus, the male spirit that animates woman, they women need to have a relationship with it. So the thing that he would often say is that if women have a bad relationship with masculinity, meaning, for example, maybe they're with a lot of guys, but they can't find one that stays with them, they'll start to develop a bitterness towards men. They'll actually turn into little men, and they'll develop this sort of abrasive personality, which is like a pseudo masculine. They'll have this sharpness and this kind of jadedness to them, and it kills their feminine spirit. And it's a very, very negative thing when you come across it. I've met it in my life, and it's like one of those things where you're like, Jesus, Young, you called that one anyway. And I guess when you talk about this idea of like going on an adventure, of course, being in this feminine passive state will lead you to maybe a sort of deadened life. But the experience of a woman as well, of being physically weaker, is that when she goes out, maybe the world is somewhat intimidating and it is scary, and maybe even people are more dangerous. Like on a foundational level, people are more dangerous. I've heard before that men can't detect creepiness, but women have this sort of innate sense for it and stuff like this. And you can imagine, again, I'm just sort of like reading one sentence here and assuming what this whole story is about, but this girl moves out and she goes into this world, and all these new people are sort of like monsters and they're scary, and her instincts initially say they're scary, I don't trust them. And it actually takes a little touch, not too much, but a little touch of masculine bravery for her to go and understand these people and relate to them. And when she has that bravery, it's almost like magic happens. She gets animated. She gains her magic. She's able to assert herself just a little bit, not turning into a little freaky dude, but actually just pulling it off well. And then all of a sudden, these spirits and these monsters actually reveal themselves to be like friendly, and her bravery gets rewarded. And then she gets to have that adventure of like meeting new people, developing a community, and all these type of things. And this could be sort of archetypal in some sense, because I guess a lot of girls would struggle with massive amounts of nervousness and intimidation. Whereas with a dude, like maybe it just wouldn't be as amplified, but to be like a different struggle he might have or something like this. So there's a thought.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's an interesting interpretation of it, actually, and would work. Definitely would work.
Amazing. I've never even seen it. And I'm calling them. Like, there you go, people. There's the stuff. There's one last thing I wanted to ask you. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts before I bounce on?
Any thoughts on something in particular? What?
No. When I drop thoughts, I'm sort of leaving space because I tend to rant. So I've literally built it into myself to just pause and be like, let the other person talk. Any thoughts is my way of saying that.
I don't think so. Nothing springs to mind at the moment.
Okay, good. I guess the last thing I'd ask, and again, you're not at liberty to answer this if you don't want to, or if it's putting you too much on the spot, but what would you see as the sort of feminine journey is now? Like if you were to sort of make a movie and tell it in all its truths, even maybe trying to capture these truths, where you're out there and you're presented this slightly fox model of how a life should look, like growing up as a girl, going to college, what happened, like what does that tell you about the world, setting yourself in the past, what are the kind of significant archetypes you're trying to do, like how does career fit into it, how does marriage, love, is marriage even a thing anymore, is that a struggle, where to live, how to relate to your parents, how to relate to society, how to relate to how to even understand yourself, how does adventure work, purpose, what's the end goal, like all these type of things, like what do you see as all that looking like?
A lot of things to think about.
Yeah, think about all those there, would you?
Yeah, I think adventure definitely needs to come into it in some way. So what would it look like? God, I don't know off the top of my head. Definitely.
Would it be travel? Would it be going mad in university, just trying a load of drugs or something like this? Like what?
Probably not.
Like a load of music? Like would it be seeing the cities for the first time? Would it be going out and meeting people outside? You could kind of grow up your family and then like building a broader community and going out and making a lot of friends.
Probably more that, I think, and I think there'd again be more of an emphasis on strength as well, because, and this was always a thing that, and I know a lot of the old Disney classics are, a lot of them very symbolic and they're great for that. But as a little kid watching them, even from when I was quite young, and this isn't true for all of them, but for like the earlier ones, so probably Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, it used to annoy me how they just didn't seem real, like the Disney princesses. I don't want to say weak, but do I want to say that? I don't know. Like in the way they were in those stories, which isn't true for all of them. Pocahontas isn't like that.
Sleeping Beauty is an example. I love how I'm just
Sleeping Beauty, and it was you know what it was about them. It was the way they cried. They'd throw themselves on the bed and like sob really dramatically, and I've never seen a girl do that. But anyway, that's
what I do. Like that's how men deal with stuff.
I've seen 2-year-olds do that, but I've never seen a grown woman do that.
Yeah, that explains me as well. Yeah, so there you go.
But I think in those stories, there's not enough emphasis on like strength and grit, which again you are lying to women if you don't have that, because you're going to need some grit at some point, and it's probably going to be different in the way that men need it, but you'll just be crushed otherwise, I think, if you don't have that, or you might become manipulative as a way to deal with it. I don't know, I think that might be the flip side. So I think I don't know, I just don't think there's enough talk about having to be strong, but whilst still having femininity intact. And I don't know off the top of my head if I can think of a way that I'd put that into a heroine's journey. Probably not dealing with conflict by beating someone up. That would probably be one of the key things.
God damn it.
Yeah.
All right, so Ronda Rousey's out of her film career now, thanks to... Yep.
But again, they're like, that's not to say that would be the same for every story. Like there are some stories like that, which is, that's fine and that's great, and but I just think with all of them, when it's like generalized, that it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I
think that's a really, it's the ability to, it's like an IQ test, like your ability to comprehend nuance. It's like, a couple of stories about maybe a girl being really good at martial arts and surprising dudes, like, wouldn't be the worst,
No, it wouldn't.
It'd be interesting. But when every fucking story is like that, you're like, all right, here, wait a second now, guys, come on, wait 1 second. This is the exception becoming the rule. It's silly.
It's not just what they're telling as well. It's also the way that they're told, which is also quite annoying. Like,
how do you mean? Like a kind of pompous, like, this is the truth, this is right, this is the way things should be, or am I being too
where they've prioritized the messaging over the storytelling. So you could have it, and I wouldn't have any problems with that. You could probably have an amazing story about some girl who's like an amazing fighter and all the rest of it, and that's brilliant. But where it's not just a like mic drop moment for the patriarchy, that kind of seems to be what a lot of it just seems to be. I don't know, so they can have cool little clips that are with.
No, I 100% understand what you're saying. There's like there's literally no depth to it. There's no like, it's like, all right, it's like you come up with a character. In some sense, the level of her interest is, she's literally like the Tarzan of the young thing. She's able to fight. and you just take that character and run them through a plot. But it's like, where's the struggle? Where's the endurance? Where's the grit? Where's the anguish? Where's all those other things? Where's the representing her dealing with nervousness and going out and trying to, like, make friends in the community, like maybe is a sort of archetypal female experience or something like that. Not to say that she couldn't be savvy and smart and well put together. There's lots of great characters that are like this, but it's like, that, where's that stuff gone? Where's the emphasis in these type of things gone? Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. Have you ever seen Gone Girl before?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I have. In terms of what? In terms of,
like she's obviously a very, because I actually think that's a, obviously it's a representation of the dark side of the feminine, the poisonous feminine.
Well, she's very manipulative, isn't she?
But I think it's really well done. Like it's not trying to bullshit it and say something like, it's just showing that, like, women can have a dark, they can be evil, and that's absolutely fine, and it's actually very, very interesting. And she doesn't do it in a male way, if you know what I mean.
No, she doesn't. And the other thing she does as well is, this is probably going to annoy people, but the managing to play the victim in a convincing way, and kind of really and using that to kind of gain a lot of sympathy, and people like that. It's true though. I've seen, and it is just true that some women do sometimes, occasionally do that as a way to manipulate people to kind of get their own way. And I mean, I had a couple of girls do that to me at school as well. So it does happen. It's really actually difficult to kind of combat that as well. So I had that for a while at school, where it was classic kind of young girl friendship group. And I rarely used to cry. I used to cry if I got angry. I didn't cry if I was upset, and they were very good at crying. So everyone believed them. The teacher believed them, and it was only when one of their mothers could admit that they'd kind of made loads of stuff up and kind of like. So I know women do that. I've seen it. I've been on the receiving end of that as well. So I'd say that's the darker side.
And this is the thing, is that I think this is another huge problem, is that there's this fear of, like, blatantly representing dark sides. It's like, you can't have a light side without a dark side. Like, the shadow needs to be there. In fact, it makes people more interesting. Like, I look at those, you could say, the classical male dominated films of the past and all that type of stuff, but most of those had an awful lot of male villains. Like, there was an awful lot of bad guys in those as well, because they're trying to show that capacity inside man as well. They're exploring all the depths of man, if you want to put it this way. The reason why I think Gone Girl is great is because it does genuinely just show the possibilities. And this is, weirdly, it's one of those shadow things. It's tied to a story about what woman's power is. Like, part of her power is that she could do that if she wanted to. Like, women won't be the active force where they'll, like, fuck up the guy's life by shooting him or something like this. But she is the type that, like, she has to endure, and this causes her to not go direct. And then she starts to think about indirect strategies to get vengeance, and she can hold that vengeance for a long time, and she can be spiteful. And these are not, like, you wouldn't advise this maybe to your sister or something like this, but these are realities, and these are possibilities. And if someone really fucks you up properly, like, you could start thinking this way, and you'd start to kind of think about how you could use your victimhood to come across as innocuous, to lay traps for people, to seed things in people's minds so that traps get laid. And this is all very, very fascinating stuff to look at. I think one of the best things in that whole film was, the rich guy played by Barney from How I Met Your Mother, and the way she just twists him, and it's like, it's so, because he's like the naive kind of like, oh my god, I hope, she likes me, she's down with me, and all this type of stuff, and she's just playing him like a fiddle. It's amazing to see that. It's really well put together.
That's another thing that's interesting, because that kind of ties in something else I was thinking about. I think what I was saying before about, like, a lot of this whole thing of, I guess, kind of overly feminine women, kind of be this way, to be a pushover, be kind of all that. I mean, it's not good for women, that kind of attitude, I guess, but I think also for men, I think if you believe that, you're probably quite easy to be manipulated. It's probably quite easy to manipulate you as well, I think. So I would say
the real red pill.
No, but if you underestimate women, I think, or you don't recognize that there is a kind of strength there, then I think it's kind of inevitable that you'd underestimate them, and it would just be quite easy to play on that, probably.
Okay, sorry, girls, but
That
I'm just getting convinced. I'm off the market. That's it. It's done. Gone Girl is real. All girls are gone girl. But no, I think you're very. I think you're very right. I think you're very right. I think that's like there's this how could I say it? There's this naive fantasy of this is actually precisely what Jung's saying is that women are like Eve. They're just like these beautiful beings. Do you know what you see on Twitter now is the trad wife meme? And there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with having like, you know, a girl maybe who's into like, you know, being around the house, cooking and all this type of stuff, loves to beautify things, loves to make stuff. Like nothing wrong with that stuff at all. My mom was like that. But at the same time, like you see these guys talk about it and it's like girl, bro, you're not talking about a woman, you're talking about an angel. And
Yeah.
let's be real here. Like
But that's yeah, which yeah, that's probably, I mean, I think that it's kind of making her more perfect than she is, but at the same time also underestimating her. That all she's got is sweetness, that there's no grit or strength there.
yeah.
But also I think then you kind of, in a way, then she's got no kind of recourse to other than to be manipulative. I think really, if she wants to have any kind of say or influence, might be the thing there. I don't know.
So I'll move on to a controversial one then as the last one because and again you're not at liberty to talk about this if you so wish and you know you can call it if you want, but I like 50 Shades of Grey is tying up the dynamic of submissive and dominance, and this is a sexual question because to understand the sexual experience, the difference between man and woman is that man wants to experience control and domination and see himself as like possessing something beautiful and being with something beautiful and it being his, and woman in some sense wants to like maybe this is speculative, but she wants to feel possessed, and she wants to feel possessed by something she admires and loves and thinks is strong and she's comfortable around, and she wants to feel that pillar of masculinity she can just sort of melt into. And I've like had girls describe it this way to me before. And she also wants to like even with something like an orgasm, there's a surrender experience to stuff like this for girls, whereas with men it's a little bit more kind of like just like go for it, brother, yes, get that one out there. That's the type of stuff. There's a different energy to the two of them. Like even when you deal with psychology of women who struggle with orgasms and stuff like this, there's a sort of always a description of like it's hard to let go. There's the mind gets in the way, and in some sense the male responsibility is to allow her, to give her something that she can relax, to meditate upon, as she can relax her mind and stuff like this. These are like really important phenomenon, and these very foundational ones speak to like, you know, absolute submission, and you could say absolute control, and these type of binaries. And like are these like the foundation towards what femininity and masculinity is, and should we like hold an account to this? Is this a realistic way to ground things and then build the pillars of our thoughts about what this stuff is on top of it, or is that too extreme, or what are your thoughts on this? Or as I said, like you're definitely not at liberty to talk about this because it can be a bit too spicy.
Is it the foundation of masculine and feminine? Yes, probably, but I wouldn't describe it as submissive. Like
I said surrender.
I think surrender, yeah. I think probably more time to think about how I'd articulate it. Yes, I think that's true. But there's more to that. There's more to the meaning of surrender than that. I don't know. I'd have to think of how else that presents itself. I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling with this one.
No, I think it's fair enough to have some time to think about it. I bring it up because I think this is a very deep dynamic. It's a deep sexual dynamic.
Yeah.
Like it's very important for a girl to feel the comfortable of surrendering and look like admittedly submitting as well. She wants to feel that, you know, as maybe as negatively toned that is. We don't mean it that way. We mean she wants to give in to something and let go, literally, and give control over to someone else. And I don't mean this is like exclusively man and woman. I was just looking up Islam there. I believe Islam, and I would consider Islam the most masculine religion on earth. It is literally a religion built around respecting male instincts at the expense of all other instincts, including women's instincts. Women wear fucking hijabs and they don't get to show their faces. Men can have 4 wives if they want. Men have the absolute say. You believe my ideology at all costs, and it's fantastically masculine. I believe Islam itself means surrender or submission. One of those two. I think it's surrender. And that's absolutely blows my mind, because it's almost like the most masculine religion is premised on a sort of feminine surrender to Allah, to God. It's very, very strange. It's like that's, I wonder, is it that sort of related dynamic? When you see within man and woman, the construction of a relationship, does that relationship need to be there? Is it like a leader and someone, like people would say stuff, a leader and a slave? I don't think it's like that at all. It's like a leader and someone who willingly says, all right, I will let you lead, but like we are together. It's that, the same way as God and the Muslims would be together. It's a divine union, this type of thing. Maybe I'm massively speculating, so I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Maybe, but maybe in a certain way. But I would say that there probably is an element of leadership there in women, just in a very different way. I'm still trying. Yeah.
Hey, you can take some. You can take. Maybe you can ponder on that. We can talk about it another time if you want.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably do need to think about that one. I mean, there's definitely truth to that, but it's not as, I think it's not as like on face value. Like there's something else. Yeah, I don't know.
What do you make of the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon?
There's obviously something interesting there, because it's not just that. Like I said, Twilight as well is kind of similar. With teenagers, and then I think there was.
You think it's too shallow?
I think it's. I think because I've got because this is something else I've got annoyed about and ranted about in the past before as well. Is like I guess you said the classic bad boy stories. But I would say I think, or I'd probably describe them as you can fix him stories. And they are kind of like that Beauty and the Beast thing, and I think they're quite powerful because I think they do tap into something true. But I also think that, I mean, I don't really care so much when it comes to adults and whatever, but what annoys me is when I see it in young adult literature, which see it all the time, the kind of you can fix him stories. And it's different to like, where someone's like genuinely kind of a terrible person, or it's genuinely like a abusive dynamic or whatever that those of teenagers are reading. I don't know. And I think I get annoyed when it's for teenagers because I think it's really cynical. I think either it's written by, I'm going to be mean here, either it's written by, because most of these stuff are written by women. So when it's aimed for teenagers, either they're kind of stuck in a teenage mentality and a bit emotionally stunted, or they know exactly what they're doing and they're cynically kind of, I don't know, like do I want to say predatory, like hooking into exactly what they like into like a teenage girl's brain, but in like a kind of way that's not healthy, or which kind of only really annoys me a lot when it's at teenagers. And I don't know, I think because I've seen examples as well, like as a kid, not my parents thankfully, but I did see examples of what actually happens when someone marries the bad boy or someone like that, and it's not pretty, like. And I don't think that's healthy as well. I think there is something in women maybe that they think, oh, can I fix him? Like, I'm sorry, that's a bit all over the place explanation. Did that make any sense? Was there anything of value there?
It inspired a thought in me, which I don't know, is like, should I really talk about this? I'm not too sure. But again, with that sort of masculine feminine dynamic, because I do think women have a can I fix him will inside of them, which is tied to the Beauty and the Beast, as you said. Like there's this wild stallion, and like guys sort of know this. Like you go and listen to guys who are telling you how to get better with girls. They'll say stuff like, she wants to feel you're a stallion and she wants to try control a stallion, be a wild stallion. She wants to be like, oh my God, come down here. She wants to try latch onto you. And this is very true. Like like girls love men with strong extroverted energy. Like it's a very attractive gravitas. But of course that's tied to, like, that's got a dark side. It's just like Gone Girl has a dark side. There's a dark side to that. Dark side is like, it's not 50 Shades of Grey, the billionaire who's just like, spanking you with his tie. There's a guy out there who's like, have you ever read stories about serial killers who cut their girlfriends up and then eat them over the course of a couple of months? that stuff happens, and that's like
Sounds
no
fun.
joke.
Yeah.
That's no joke. Like that's
Yeah.
horrible shit, and that's like it's a psychopath. It's a sadist who's
Yeah.
had his will enacted. And
Well,
go on.
no, sorry. What are you gonna say?
I half forgot what I was going to say. Wait there.
Sorry.
So I was saying that there's that understanding that there's dark side to all this stuff.
Yeah.
And no, I've lost my point. I lost it.
Sorry.
It drifted out of my head. You're all
I'm
good.
sorry, it's my fault.
It'll come back to me. My brain's like that. It'll come back to me.
No, I was going to say the thing that you were saying with the dark side to it. So interestingly, actually, one of the most successful young adult series of the last few years is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And again, aimed at teenagers. I've seen people online talk about it, and like kids as young, like girls as young as 9 are reading it, and I genuinely hate that series because it's not only is it very bad and very badly written, but it's like he breaks her arm intentionally and regularly drugs her, which is, but seriously, this is like teenagers, like kids, like, you know, small little children. Like I said, like 9-year-olds are
you broke my arm again.
Yeah, but not like on purpose, intentionally. And like I said, then drugs her on a regular basis. So that's an interesting story to want to write for teenage girls. But it's okay because you can fix him. And that I'm not a big fan of. And I think that is
do you know what that could be?
You can't fix him if he's, but also, yeah, I don't know. I think the bad boys as well, a lot of them, they're just overgrown children. They're not. Anyway, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's there's a couple of things that have been idolized in popular culture that are sort of like, you're kind of like scratching your head, like the the thug, you know, like the kind of thug life and all that stuff. It's like it's kind of cool. It's cool to see a guy who's got a will to power, like Scarface, you know, that he's going to go out there and commit crime and make it no matter what, even if it costs, even he's going to go out there and make it, even if it requires him to commit crime. There's something admirable in that. But at the same time, like, I've grown up, I'm no fucking thug, I'm not pretending that, but I've grown up around, like, I've had friends die and stuff like this. Like, I've grown up around pretty hard stuff, and actually most of it's not that glamorous at all. It's like really, it's something that's got this heavy thing you want to escape from. And it's so strange to see it glamorized, because it's not like, you know, what's glamorous is this sounds so fucking pretentious, but looking at someone like you know, Napoleon organizing a massive revolutionary army and going and taking over half of Europe, like, there's something thuggish about that, but there's also something very badass and crazy about that as well. And that takes orders of magnitude more sophistication and skill and intelligence than just sitting in a housing estate selling drugs or something like this. And these are things that you're seeing very, very popularized. And then the same, for example, with maybe stuff like abuse and all this. Like, women will have that instinct within them to try fix the guy, and it can lead them to very bad places. And I've know stories of a girl who was like this. This is now back old time Ireland, where you could say vigilante justice was more popular. So there was a woman who's I knew, and I didn't know her, but as in my circles from the past, of the people I knew, she was like a generation before me. But she got involved with a dude who was just beating her, you know, like kind of classic story. She'd come home, make the dinner, and he'd give her a slap and be like, the dinner's not good enough. And her brother and her uncle, her dad, the three of them, I think, went down, and they had to straighten him out. Let's put it this way. They had to like absolutely ruin him. Apparently pulled him out in the street and gave him walloping around the place. And I think about that, and I hear about stuff of like maybe those abuse stories from like teenage kids and all this stuff. And you're kind of thinking the way that stuff was back in the day was just so bleak. Like, it was so horrifically sad, because it was just a girl trapped in a house, bound by marriage, because marriage makes sense, the reason why it's so restrictive. But then if it's a bad marriage, you are fucked. And usually the only way to break out of it is like extreme violence. And of all things, the person who's going to save you is your goddamn brother, and they're going to risk their lives to get in a violent confrontation with some dangerous dude in order to free you from it and all this stuff. Like, these are really, really intense and serious things, and they're not kind of like, I don't know, they're just a bit bleak, like when you kind of look at them. So that's sort of what was coming to mind. I don't know, is that in any way related to a point, but just some flashing thoughts.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, because people, yeah, I don't know, it's not good, that kind of thing, I think. And that is, I have ranted about that a lot before in the past, and people kind of, why am I kind of get so riled up about it? I think because my mum drilled that into all of us. She's got 3 daughters, I've got a brother as well, but absolutely under no circumstances, no bad boys, none of that. Well, she had to see her sister kind of go through, my aunt loved bad boys when she was a teenager, but then it ended up her first husband tried to kill her. So it's like, it's not yeah, she had to leave the country in the end because he kept tracking her down. But so yeah. But that's the thing, it's like, I don't know, maybe like, could I really have a hatred of that? Maybe, and that's not the only example I had, that's an extreme example, but not the only example I had of, kind of, it's not a good, it's not a good thing that kind of you can fix him kind of stories that are around a lot now. And I think it's kind of like Beauty and the Beast, but I see it as like a twisted version of it, and I just hate it when it's like at teenage girls, because I think they get really like invested in it, and I just think it's predatory. I just think it's so formulated to like just get them, and like, yeah, I don't know.
Do you think there might be another sort of situation here where we have like sort of an archetypal phenomenon that's like, for example, you can say the masculine spirit of people in the modern world is drastically weaker than it was beforehand, and so women, like, generally speaking, people just aren't experiencing true male energy anymore. And so the like in the past, a civilized man would have to be a savage thug who was capable of extreme violence, but was also then chose out of that to become, sophisticated and present himself well. For example, in England, the way that like the sort of libertarian ethos in England was won is because every single man in England was capable of wielding a bow and arrow. He was a trained master of violence, and the king came around and said, "Guys, we're going to do one thing," and the king was basically abusing the people, and then the people and the nobles got together and said, "Fuck you, bro! Like we could literally build an army from the ground up because we can all fight. We're all dangerous." And we want something higher. We want Magna Carta. We want our Bill of Rights and all this stuff. And that was like, that's legitimately how that stuff happened, because they were dangerous men with who were civilized, cultured thugs, if you want to put it this way. But because that energy is completely gone, there's no danger inside men anymore at all. It turns into this sort of pathological, it's a shadow, it's Jungian shadow projection. You fantasize about a silly extreme that is like, actually you romanticize a silly extreme, and actually in truth there's energy there, like you should go that direction, there's something powerful there, but it's about like claiming that force and mastering it and turning it into something integrated which you can push forward, which is like sort of, I guess, the representation of I don't know, the cultured thug, the Magna Carta Englishman or something like that.
No, that's an interesting point, actually, that could be a result of it being suppressed. I think there might be truth to that.
Scoring points all over here. I'm afraid my voice is starting to get burnt out, so I'd say we should wrap it up at some point. But if you have any last thoughts or any last ponderings or anything you want to run by.
Do I have any last thoughts? I don't think I do, apart from me still trying to figure out the whole surrender question.
Oh dear.
I'm going to think about that. It's annoying. You don't have a thought like on the tip of your tongue. Like I know what I mean, but I don't know how to translate it. Yeah, I need to think about that.
It's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. Always a challenge.
No, I don't think there was anything else. I think, not for now. Not probably without going off on a massive tangent. So
nice. All right, good stuff. Well, if you want to wrap up in any way, I don't know, would you like anything recorded to say to the people before we go? Do you want me to say goodbye, or I guess Steph over in Uberboyo, if you want to find me there?
I was going to say, I'll mention it at the beginning as well, the intro, but where can people find you? Go
on YouTube and hop over to uberboyo.com. You probably that'll be a place. Sorry, go on YouTube and look at Uberboyo or uberboyo.com if you so wish, and this lady maybe will give you a link in the description if she's so kind or something like that. Make it easier to find.
I'll definitely do that.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my spiraling rants. So it's a very interesting conversation. I love talking about this stuff though, because it's something I just don't explore, but I think it's really legit though. Really legit. It's a big problem. I've about 15% of the people who listen to me are girls, and I don't talk to them in any way exclusively or specifically. I talk maybe about the things I talk to. So, but I see this stuff an awful lot, and I've spoken to a lot of girls, and it's legit. It's legit, a real deal and problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this. It's very, very interesting. A lot of different things to think about. I'm gonna ponder that question.
Oh dear. Oh dear. All right. Set the mind to jogging. Set the mind to jogging.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on, and it was
No
a pleasure.
worries.
It was a pleasure. And
Yes.
yeah, good stuff.